Mr. Darcy's sister, Georgiana, is a very accomplished musician. And I, too, should have been a great proficient if I'd ever learnt.
You would have been proficient at anything, Lady Catherine.
So would Anne.
That goes without saying.
Darcy, do come here. Sit down. I was just telling Mrs. Collins how exquisitely dear Anne would have played if her health had permitted her to study.
I don't doubt it.
Your dear mother was so fond of Anne.
Yes, I know.
You have an only daughter, she used to say to me, and I have an only son. It's as though Providence had created them for one another, she used to say.
Incredible. I mean, exactly. I mean, excuse me. Oh, don't stop, Miss Elizabeth. That was charming.
Isn't that the right time to stop when people still think you're charming? If I went on, you might change your mind.
Miss Bennet?
I'm summoned.
It was quite creditable, my dear. Miss Bennet wouldn't play at all badly if she practiced more. Practice, Miss Bennet, practice. You can't do enough of it. Mrs. Collins has no piano forte, of course, but you're very welcome to practice here every day.
Oh, thank you, Lady Catherine.
There's a very fair instrument in the housekeeper's room. You'll disturb no one there.
You are really too gracious, Lady Catherine. But I shouldn't care to disturb the housekeeper.
I protest, Aunt Catherine. Why talk of practicing when Miss Bennet should be playing? Come, Miss Bennet. I insist on your favoring us again. There is, needless to say, a rich assortment of music here. My aunt means quite kindly, Miss Elizabeth. Her manner is sometimes a little unfortunate.
Having already met you, I was happily prepared for your aunt's manner.
But do you not feel the lack of society, of the amusement which London provides?
As I have never lived in London, sir, I cannot tell. I do not miss that which I have never enjoyed.
But do you not wish to see the theatre, to hear music from time to time?
Oh, the theatre I would dearly love to see more often. I have a lively interest in that respect. Of music we have plenty in Hertfordshire.
And whose music do you prefer?
Oh, well...
Fitzwilliam, what are you telling Miss Bennet? Let me hear it.
We're speaking of music, ma'am.
Oh, of music. Then pray speak aloud. It is of all subjects my delight. I must share in the conversation if you are talking of music. There are few people in England, I suppose, who have a more true enjoyment of music than myself. If I had ever learned, I should have been most proficient. What do you say,
Miss Bennet, why do you not play for us? It would be a pleasure to hear you.
I would not like to interrupt Lady Catherine.
There is but little danger of that.
Fitzwilliam, what is that you are saying?
Oh, I'm trying to persuade Miss Bennet to sing for us, ma'am.
Let her sing, then, if she must. I would advise the King of Sardinia to march straight into Savoy.
There is a fine old saying, Colonel Fitzwilliam, which of course everybody here is familiar with. Keep your breath to cool your porridge. Well, I shall keep mine to swell my song. Oh, ponder well, be not severe, so savor it.
Will you not join Mr. Berg in a game of quadrille or casino?
I should be honored.
My dear, depends for Molly's life. You mean to frighten me, Mr. Darcy, by coming in all this state to hear me? But I will not be alarmed, though your sister does play so well. There is a stubbornness about me that never can bear to be frightened at the will of others. My courage rises with every attempt to intimidate me.
I shall not say that you are mistaken, because you could not really believe that I entertain any design of alarming you. And I've had the pleasure of your acquaintance long enough to know that you find great enjoyment in occasionally professing opinions which are, in fact, not your own.
Cease your fanning,
What is happening over there? Darcy, I insist on knowing what you are talking about.
Miss Bennet's song speaks for itself.
Miss Bennet would not play at all amiss if she practiced more and had the advantage of a London master. She has a good notion of fingering, but her taste is not so good as Anne's.
I find Miss Bennet's performance delightful, ma'am. I could listen to her all evening.
What is it you are saying, Fitzwilliam? What is it you are talking of? What is it you are telling Miss Bennet? Let me hear what it is.
We're speaking of music, madam.
Music? Oh, then pray speak aloud. It is of all subjects my delight. I must have my share in the conversation if you are speaking of music. There are few people in England, I suppose, who have a more true enjoyment of music than myself, or a better natural taste. If I had ever learned, I should have been a great proficient. And so would Anne, if her health had allowed her to so apply. How does your sister Georgiana get on, Darcy?
She is wonderfully proficient, madam.
Pray tell her from me that she cannot expect to excel if she does not practice a great deal. I have told Miss Bennet several times that she will never play really well unless she practices more, and on a good instrument. She may come to Rosings and practice on the pianoforte in the housekeeper's room. She will be in nobody's way in that part of the house. Will you play for us now, Miss Bennet, and sing?
Please do, Miss Bennet.
Well, we're waiting, Miss Bennet.
Farewell to the woodlands, farewell to the bars, farewell.
Miss Bennet's father's estate is entailed on Mr. Collins, I believe. I am glad of it for you, Mrs. Collins, but otherwise see no occasion for entailing estates away from the female line. Mrs. Bennet had 5 daughters, and as if that were not bad enough, has altogether left them to run wild with no governess. Miss Bennet expresses herself very decidedly for one so young. She cannot be more than 21. Her sisters are all out, all 5 of them. The younger out before the elder are married. They will have too much time to get into trouble. It is not wise, mark my words. The mother sounds to me a very foolish person.
You mean to frighten me, Mr. Darcy, by coming in all this state to hear me. But I will not be alarmed, though your sister does play so well, and Mr. Berg would, if only she could. There is a stubbornness about me that can never bear to be frightened at the will of others. My courage always rises at every attempt to intimidate me.
I shall not say that you're mistaken, because you could not really believe me to entertain any design of alarming you. And I've had the pleasure of your acquaintance long enough to know that you find great enjoyment in occasionally professing opinions which are in fact not your own.
Oh, your cousin will give you a very pretty notion of me, and teach you not to believe a word I say. I am unlucky in meeting with a man so well able to expose my character in part of the world where I had hoped to pass myself off with some degree of credit. You are impolitic, Mr. Darcy, in provoking me to retaliate.
I am not afraid of you.
Pray let me hear more about my cousin, Miss Bennet. I should like to know how he behaves amongst strangers.
Well, prepare yourself for something dreadful. I first met Mr. Darcy at a ball, where he danced only 4 dances, though gentlemen were scarce. And to my knowledge, more than one lady was sitting down in want of a partner.
I knew only my own party.
Oh, and nobody can ever be expected to be introduced in a ballroom. What shall I play next, Colonel? My fingers await your orders.
Perhaps I should have sought introductions, but I'm ill qualified to recommend myself to strangers.
Man of sense and education who's lived in the world, ill-qualified. How can that be, Colonel?
Well, he will not give himself the trouble, I suppose.
I cannot converse easily with those I have not seen before. I cannot catch the love of conversation or appear interested in their concerns, as others seem to do.
My fingers are not so masterly on this instrument as many others. But then I've always supposed it to be my fault, because I would not give myself the trouble.
What is it you are saying, Miss Bennet? What is it you are talking of, Darcy? Anne, come here and have your share of the conversation. Miss Bennet may have a very fine notion of fingering, but her taste is not equal to Anne's. How could it be? Her sisters all out, and not even the eldest married.
Play really well, Miss Bennet, unless you practice more. You may come to Rosings as often as you like and play on the pianoforte in Mrs. Jenkinson's room. She would be in nobody's way in that part of the house.
Thank you, Mum.
There are few people in England, I suppose, who have more true enjoyment in music than myself, or a better taste. And if I had ever learnt, I should be a true proficient. And so would Anne, if her health had allowed it.
Do you mean to frighten me, Mr. Darcy, by coming in all this state to hear me? But I won't be alarmed. My courage always rises with every attempt to intimidate me.
I know you find great enjoyment in professing opinions which are not your own.
Your cousin would teach you not to believe a word I say, Colonel Fitzwilliam. That is ungenerous of him, is it not?
It is indeed, Darcy.
Impolitic, too, for it provokes me to retaliate and say somewhat of his behaviour in Hertfordshire which may shock his relations.
I am not afraid of you.
What have you to accuse him of? I should dearly like to know how he behaves among strangers.
First time I ever saw Mr. Darcy was at a ball where he danced only 4 dances, though gentlemen were scarce and more than one lady was in want of a partner. I'm sorry to pain you, but so it was.
I can well believe it.
I fear I am ill-qualified to recommend myself to strangers.
Shall we ask him why? Why a man of sense and education who has lived in the world should be ill-qualified to recommend himself to strangers?
I have not that talent which some possess of conversing easily with strangers.
I do not play this instrument so well as I should wish to. But I have always supposed that to be my own fault, because I would not take the trouble of practicing.
You're perfectly right. You've employed your time much better.
No one admitted to the privilege of hearing you could think anything wanting.
We neither of us perform to strangers.
What are you talking of? What are you telling Miss Bennet? I must have my share in the conversation.
Come, Miss Bennet, and play for us.
No, I beg you.
For music is my delight. In fact, there are few people in England who have more true enjoyment of music than myself. Or better natural taste. If I had ever learned, I should have been a great proficient. So would Anne. if her health would have allowed her.
Lady Catherine, I'm not afflicted with false modesty. When I say I play poorly,
Come, Lizzy. Her ladyship demands it.
How does Georgiana get along, Darcy?
She plays very well.
I hope she practices. No excellence can be acquired without constant practice. I've told Mrs. Collins this. Though you have no instrument of your own, you're very welcome to come to Rosings and play on the pianoforte in the housekeeper's room.
Oh, thank you, Your
You'll be in nobody's way in that part of the house.
you mean to frighten me, Mr. Darcy, by coming in all your state to hear me. But I won't be alarmed, even if your sister does play so well.
I'm well enough acquainted with you, Miss Elizabeth, to know that I cannot alarm you, even should I wish it.
What was my friend like in Hertfordshire?
You really care to know? Prepare yourself for something very dreadful. The first time I saw him at the assembly, he danced with nobody at all, even though gentlemen were scarce and there was more than one young lady sitting down without a partner.
I knew nobody beyond my own party.
Oh, and nobody can be introduced in a ballroom.
Fitzwilliam, I need you.
I do not have the talent of conversing easily with people I have never met before.
Perhaps you should take your aunt's advice and practice.